Take a person, take a story, take you on a journey. It's your take.
On today's Your Take, I'm joined by a popular children's author. Before becoming an author, my guest started working for an advertising agency as a copywriter. A big writing breakthrough occurred 10 years ago, when in 2012, her first book was published. She has now written 40 children's books, including Isabelle and the Crooks, Witch in Training, Do Not Mess with the Mermaids, When Cucumber Lost His Cool, Grandmas from Mars, Goodnight Spaceman, and many more. In 2016, British astronaut Tim Peeke read a book, Goodnight Spaceman, Live from Space, on TV channel CBeebies. 4 years later, my guest won the Laugh Out Loud Book Awards alongside David Walliams. Her favourite children's books are Charlotte Webb, The BFG, and Hop on Pop. She's also resident of a small village in Nova Scotia called Tatamagouche. Today I'm joined by Michelle Robinson. We discuss Michelle's upbringing, her university education, and her early writing career, the publication of her first children's book in 2012, a love of writing and humour, her writing influences, and her plans for the future. A very warm welcome and thanks on this evening for joining me as a guest on Your Take.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me, James. Tatamagouche. Tatamagouche was the word you were looking for.
I knew I was going to fluff it on the night. It always...
Everyone does. Everyone does. I still do, and I live here, so it's fine.
They say it'd be all right on the night. I'm looking forward to talking to you about your journey as a writer and where you started from your education to your university years, to working as a copywriter, and then the publication of your first book, and then going on to write so many. First children's author we spoke to, but you're joined by another author called Nikki Shakula. But we'll go back to the very beginning, and we'll go back in time. And I kind of wanted to start off by talking about your early life. You share the same birthday as the writer Roald Dahl, which is September the 13th. But
it's true. Not the same year. I always have to point this out to young children when I'm in schools. Not the same year. But yes, September 13th. He was one of my heroes growing up. I loved Roald Dahl's books. We read them in school a lot. A teacher would read, the BFG is the classroom read. I just found it completely absorbing and lovely. I loved being told stories. The more kind of magical and transporting, the better, because real life can be a bit sad sometimes, or a bit challenging, or a bit worrying. Quite often had scary stuff going on at home, lack of money, or parents arguing, or my mum's mental health wasn't always very good. And so books and stories just gave me somewhere I could go that was different and relaxing and fun. So I think I still just associate storytelling and reading books with escape, which I love. Not that my life needs escaping from, it's lovely, but
I wanted to pick up on kind of your early life, and I want to ask where you were born, and I just want you to paint a bit of a portrait of family life and just tell us a bit about your parents, who they are and what they did for a living, and do you have any siblings?
Yes, I have two brothers. I have a big brother, Dan, who lives in Gloucester, which is where I was raised, so kind of rural Gloucestershire. And I have a little brother, Rob, who lives in Chicago with his wife. And my mum and dad, my dad was a builder and a lecturer at Gloucester College, used to teach bricklaying. And my mum was a stay-at-home mum who raised us. And they're great. They're still great. They live in Gloucester. Mum, bless her, has always had struggles with her mental health, as many of us do. So it sometimes made childhood a little bit bewildering and frightening. Not her fault, one of those things. Lots of people have to live with it. Dad was always working really hard to bring in the money and, you know, keep us all fed and happy. And he's very playful and he really likes stories and making up stories. So he's always singing, so he's bursting into song, making up silly songs and silly stories. And I think that just really helped nurture my love of language. But yeah, I grew up kind of in the countryside, really. So I used to be able to play outdoors a lot. I'd pretend that I was Jack from Treasure Island and stowing away on a pirate ship and things like that. We used to have a cornfield out the back of our house. So I used to love it when it got ploughed and I could just go and look for like bits of broken pottery and old hobnails and things in the mud. Yeah, I just liked to, I think I was alone quite a lot because my big brother was always out playing football. And my little brother was 10 years younger. So for my sort of first 10 years of my life, I was on my own quite a lot, which is good for the imagination, I think. But yeah, I would say I had a happy childhood, sometimes a bit stressful and worrying because I was a kid and kids don't understand grown-up stuff. But yeah, great on the whole.
It seemed like you always had a dream to become an author from a very, very young age. I think it was 5 years old.
Yeah.
What fascinated you about writing and telling stories? And can you recall stories that were read to you as a child and which ones were your favorites?
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of money, so we didn't have a lot of books. So we'd kind of have the same few books over and over again. And looking back on them now, some of them were really rubbish, but I loved them anyway because they were what we had. And I'd be really fascinated at looking at the pictures. I remember my granddad used to have a set of Encyclopedia Britannica, as everyone did, right? And world books, I think they were called. I'd look through them because there were certain photos that just fascinated me, like a really scary monkey or, you know, the big tarantula that I didn't want to look at. So I just remembered like the same few books over and over. And we'd sometimes go to like the secondhand shops and charity shops and pick up Famous Five books for 10p or Agatha Christie's and stuff like that. I'm not sure what particularly, I don't really know why I was drawn to stories. I think it probably, like trying to post-rationalize it, I think it probably was a bit of escape and a bit of comfort. I loved that when you read a book, it was like you were hanging out with friends, you know? The Famous Five felt like my tribe, which is ridiculous. But why I wanted to, I don't know. I guess I just thought it was fun. I liked making up stories. I liked reading stories. I liked drawing the pictures. I liked physically making books. So I'd write on scraps of paper and staple them together. I just liked that you could create anything you wanted. I still like that. I still like that if you want it to exist, you can make it be. So if there isn't a book that you like that's got all the stuff you like in it, well, make it up and write it down. I just loved that. I guess it gave me some form of control. You know, you can control what happens to the characters in your stories. So if you're not having a great time, you can have an adventure by writing it down.
So far, it's been interesting speaking about your background, where you were from, a bit about your parents, and also about trying to escape the reality of your mum's mental illness and difficulties with depression and so on. I kind of wanted to now pick up on your kind of early schooling, and I wanted to ask you where you went to school and were they happy times in your life? And would you say you were a kind of natural squatter and an academic, and what subjects did you excel in?
I loved primary school. I went to a very small village school in Tiverton in Gloucester. I absolutely loved it. Really, really loved it. Because there weren't many of us. So it was just cozy. I'm quite shy. And so that just suited me really well. And the teachers were lovely and it was all good fun. And, you know, lots of country dancing and lots of time for creative writing and drawing. And even if the topic was geography, you were encouraged to do it in a creative way. Which just really suited me. So that's always what I've been better at than actually necessarily the academical side of things. I was fine. I was mostly A's and B's. I'm a mostly A's and B's kind of person. But a lot of it was just from graft. You know, I wanted to do well. I I think I just always liked being told, well done. I still quite like being told, well done. So it always feels nice, you get a book published and it feels like someone's gone, well done, you passed. But no, I enjoyed it. Secondary school for me, I found a lot more troubling. I just found it a real wrench, like going from a village school up to this like comprehensive. For me, that was just, I think I was too immature to kind of handle that shift.
Yeah.
All of that, just the growing up stuff and the different friends. I think I messed all that up completely for a good while because I just didn't know how to do it. I was not my parents weren't particularly social, so I don't think I was particularly well socialized. It wasn't until I was in my teens that I kind of figured out that you could be your own person and that it was all right to meet people and have friends, and that's normal. So yeah, I found secondary school troubling, but I still had a lot of fun there. So it was all good in the end.
We'll talk about your end of your tenure at secondary school. You went on to do A-levels and then you went to university.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, where did you go to university and what did you study?
Yeah.
And how do you look back at your university tenure and what did you learn from your time there? And also you kind of worked part-time during your studies. What did that kind of teach you about life and kind of the working world and university life on top of that as well?
Yeah, I felt the same thing. I think going away to university, I was so immature and so not ready to be a grown-up and be responsible for money and cooking and anything really, my own emotional health and things like that. I had no idea. Felt like a completely terrified, lost individual, but it was brilliant as well. So I went to Bournemouth University and I studied creative advertising at the time because I looked in the brochure and I thought it looked like my cup of tea. It was all marker pens and paper and coming up with ideas and expressing it in words and pictures. Well, that's what I do. That's what I love. So it suited me down to a T. It was creative, it was playful, it was all about imagination, and it was all about honing those skills of coming up with loads and loads of concepts and not being precious about them, taking criticism on the chin, which is really important in publishing. It's just constant, we don't like this, change this, why have you done it this way, moron? There's a lot of that. So it was 3 years of university of that. I was in a studio with, again, quite a small course, a small group of people, which suited me well. And I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot about myself and about personal responsibility. I loved it. But I did find, again, the whole being away from my little village, suddenly in a big city with a lot of students who seemed a lot more grown up than me, I found it completely overwhelming. But good in the end. I made some really good friends and it got me into working in advertising. It got me into words and pictures, which eventually got me into doing what I really love, which was picture books. So it's like stepping stones, and if I hadn't gone there, I wouldn't have met my husband. And it's all these things lead to something, even if you're not quite sure that they're the right thing at the time, right?
From the seaside town of Bournemouth, one of my favorite parts of the world, and I know it well.
Yeah.
3 years at university and then graduation and going on to, I suppose, be put out into the real world, as they say.
Yeah.
You started working, as you mentioned, for an advertising agency as a copywriter.
Yeah.
How did you secure work in that area?
Yeah.
What did the work involve?
Yeah.
And how long were you a copywriter?
Yeah, good question. And I didn't answer the first bit of your other one, which is that I was working through university. So I had like shop jobs. I'd work in clothes shops and things like that, and gift shops, just to pay the bills. So yeah, so after Bournemouth, I moved to Bristol and I just applied to all the advertising agencies in Bristol. I sent them examples of my work from college and stuff, and showed willing, I think. So I got to go into one and meet the creative director and have a chat, and they took me on for an absolute pittance. I was, I had to be prepared to work for just about nothing. And I did that a few times. I worked a few different copywriting jobs. So copywriting is basically, I think a lot of people hear the word copyright and they imagine it's the little C in a circle and it's all about legalities and ownership. But copywriting, as in copywriting, is coming up with the ideas behind adverts and also the words that go on adverts. So if you looked at a billboard or a poster or an advert in the newspaper or listen to a radio ad or watch a TV ad, someone's got to write the script. Someone's got to come up with a headline. Someone's got to come up with all the blurb on it, even the really boring terms and conditions. So that's what I was doing for several years. And it was all right. It was all about ideas, and it was all about words and pictures, and it was a lot of fun sometimes, but the hours were very, very long. And again, it was you get criticized a lot. So, you know, clients who are paying you money to come up with their advertising campaign think they can be as rude and as mean and as bossy as they like. So it's not the most pleasant job sometimes. And I knew all along that it wasn't what I wanted to be using my writing skills for. So I kept it up for 10 years in the end, and kind of, you know, rose through the ranks and ended up running teams and being my own boss and things. But it never actually made me happy. I met some lovely people. I had a lot of fun, but it's quite no offense to other advertisers, it's quite a shallow thing. You don't get anything out of it. You're just helping big companies make money. It's not the most fun.
Away from your working life,
yeah,
we'll digress. And you spent hours of your spare time writing stories. What kind of stories were you writing, and were they always aimed at children? And did you have a long-term plan to become a children's writer and eventually quit your job as a copywriter?
That was always my hope. I just didn't know if it was possible. So yes, I just would, children's stories always. I've never really tried to write anything else. It's just, I think somewhere inside me, I'm stuck at about 5-6 years old. I love kids. I relate really well to kids. I enjoy talking to children on their own level. I hope to anyway. I think it's a nicer level to be on. They don't have prejudices. They are full of hope and positivity. And they see the world in a completely different way. And I think part of me still does that. So I just match it well. So yes, I was just writing children's stories in my spare time. And I always think of it as it's a bit like riding a bike, learning something like writing for children. You kind of, to start with, you have your stabilizers on, right? So you're being you're sort of copycatting the stuff you love while you're learning, right? Like those stabilizers are on. And the more you do it, the more you develop your own style and your own voice. So yeah, I was turning up to my desk at like 6-7 in the morning to write my stuff, and then I'd get the working day going. And then eventually it got to the point where I'd turn up early, do my paid copywriting until about 9 o'clock, until everyone turned up, and then I'd sit and just write stories all day and get paid for it. If you can get away with it, I highly recommend it. It was great fun.
Yeah, why not?
So yeah, I just kept it up, and I did a few writing courses that really, really helped. And I think I was stubborn enough. I probably had just enough self-belief. I think you have to be a little bit arrogant, hopefully in a nice way and not an unpleasant way. You have to believe in yourself, because no one else is going to open the door for you and go, come on in, write us a book. You have to kind of do it and then convince someone that it's good enough to publish. So I just kept going. I've gone wrong a lot. I was thinking, like when you learn to run or whatever, people do this couch to 5K or whatever. And actually, you've got to think about your cumulative. How many miles are you putting in? It's not about, well, I did 3K today and I did 5K. Actually, you think about all the miles you get behind you. Writing is like that. All those words you put down, most of them end up in the bin, but they're all getting you somewhere.
Yeah.
It's cumulative.
It's perseverance, isn't it? And I suppose, unless you're naturally gifted and you have natural ability, which probably most of us don't have, in fairness, I think to be good at something, whether you want to be good at a musical instrument or good at writing or filmmaking, whatever the discipline, you have to put that dedication in, don't you? You have to constantly,
definitely. You have to nurture it, right? And you have to go through the pain barrier with it as well. Like I said, pick up an instrument, you're not going to be amazing at it straight away. And if you want to get amazing at it, you're right, you've got to put those hours in. You've got to get blisters on your fingers. You've got to go wrong. You've got to learn why you went wrong so that you don't do it again. And it's the same with writing. So I think sometimes people, it's like I work with a lot of illustrators, obviously do all the pictures in my books because I'm not that good at drawing. I love to draw, find it really relaxing. I can't do it well enough for people to want to buy and, you know, look at again and again. But I think a lot of people will look at an illustrator and go, oh, I could never do that because I was rubbish at art. But people look at writers and they go, well, I could have a go at writing a book. I can hold a pen. And it's like, well, yeah, you could, and you could certainly give it a go. And I would encourage anyone to do so if they want to, because it's an incredibly relaxing, rewarding, wonderful thing to be able to do. To express yourself in writing is brilliant. So I wholeheartedly recommend it. But you do have to accept that it is a craft. It's a craft skill, and you have to hone it. And it's not easy to do 40 books and make a career out of it. It's not difficult. Don't get me wrong. It's not, I don't think I'm a brain surgeon or a teacher or anything with more value, but it is a craft, and it is a skill, and it's a trade that you have to learn. You know, there's a knack to writing in things in a way that they will be popular and commercial. It's a trade, you know.
Before you got to number 40, I wanted to turn the clock back around about 10 years. We go back to 2012.
Oh, shave off some wrinkles, please. Lockdown's added a few. Filter.
Grey hairs I'm starting to get after lockdown. Your first book was published. I wanted to ask, what was that book, and what were the challenges involved in getting your work seen and eventually being given the green light and it going for being published?
Yeah, so my first book was called What to Do If an Elephant Stands on Your Foot. And it was one of those ones that I wrote in the morning at my desk before work. And I had met on one of my writing courses, I'd met two published authors who tutored this course. And they saw what I was doing and thought I was good enough, and kind of, you know, they say, you're already there, you know, you're not practicing, you're doing it. So they put me in touch with one of their agents, and she took this story, What to Do If an Elephant Stands on Your Foot, to the Bologna Children's Book Fair, which is where all the publishers get together and try and buy the best stuff that's going, and, you know, broker deals and stuff like that. And she had an offer from Penguin in America on my book, which was brilliant. So yeah, I was sitting at my desk and I got this email from her from Italy saying, I've just had an offer from Penguin. So I just wanted to turn cartwheels. So it was quite a whirlwind in some ways, but then I'd submitted that to her in, I think, something like December of 2008, I think it was. Or was it 2006? And I didn't hear back until, it was like a whole year of waiting to hear anything. Yeah. So I just kind of kept plodding on. It is slow and it is hard. And what I realized was, once I had a foot in the door, or even a toe, I had to keep forcing it until I was up to my ankle, and then my knee. You know, you just have to keep it coming. So you can't just have one story either. They're like, right, well, where are your other stories? So for me to get an agent, she needed to know that I was a long-term prospect, that I hadn't just written one book because I liked the idea of writing a book, that I had lots of other ideas and lots of other stories, and they would keep coming, because I needed to be a commercial prospect for her. But luckily, that's what I do. I'm not short of ideas. So I just kept going and kept going and kept going. But yeah, I knew where I wanted to get to. So I just kind of kept it firmly in mind and kept ploughing on. I sort of wouldn't take no for an answer. I just wouldn't, which makes it sound really easy. It's not. It's just, there was no way I was gonna not do it. Just kind of thought, life is too short, right? If you've got a dream, you gotta give it a go.
From that perseverance and what you've just said, it kind of leads nicely to my next question. And we spoke earlier about, if to be good at something and you want to pursue a career in it, you have to be dedicated, you have to go through the highs and lows, make the mistakes and so on.
Yeah.
But equally, interestingly, you said to make it commercially, as a creative person, you also need a publisher or a distributor, whatever your discipline is, behind you. So I wanted to ask about your long-term working relationship with particularly the book publisher Bloomsbury,
Yeah.
How did that relationship begin, and have they published all your books to date?
I work with quite a lot of different publishers because I'm so prolific that one publisher can't do that many books a year, if you know what I mean. They've only got a certain amount of slots on their schedule, and they can't all be by me. They need to publish some other people. But equally, I need to make a living, and you don't make a lot of money from like publishing a picture book. So if I did one picture book a year, say with Bloomsbury, or one every 3 years, I wouldn't be able to make a living. I'd still be having another job as well. So I end up working with quite a few big publishers. I love working with Bloomsbury. They have been on board from the word go, which is amazing. And they're very supportive of me. And I love the books they create. I think they make really good choices with who they publish and what they publish. It's always quality. The whole team behind it, as you say, you need to do well, you need like a juggernaut of a publisher behind you. It's because then everything just is in place already for it to at least have a shot of succeeding. So you've got sales and marketing who know how to get it into bookshops or supermarkets or whatever it is. They'll know what the market is doing. So they'll know what else is coming out and where your book is going to sit alongside what other stuff. There'll be even down to distribution and printing. All this stuff really, really matters. And the teams who then might try and sell one of my books in translation to another publisher in another country so that it can go on and make more money back for Bloomsbury or whoever's publishing it, right? So having all that behind you is wonderful. And Bloomsbury are excellent across the board at all that stuff. So I've loved working with them. But yes, I do find that I need a few extra just to kind of fit all my books in. But you have to be careful not to sort of compete with your own self. So I've got 3 publishers at the minute asking me for books about unicorns. I'm like, well, you can't all have a book about a unicorn. It's not going to happen. And have we not already got enough books about unicorns, please, publishing world? Come on. Can we just have a cow or something? Give cows a chance.
I wanted to ask you that question that most creative people hate being asked this one. And I once asked a writer this question and they said, I just write. But I wanted to ask about like the creative storytelling process and how it works for you.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask where you write, how many hours you set aside to write per day.
Yeah.
And my final question linked to that, which we kind of picked up a bit earlier on, is how important are the illustrations that you use and the relationship with the illustrators you collaborate with?
Yeah. Okay. I remember all of those questions. There's a lot of questions in one.
Sorry, I'm terrible. I put like 10 questions. I forgot what you just,
Good question.
Too much detail.
So I find the first thing in the day is my favorite time to write, because when you just wake up, you're kind of still half dreaming. Your critical mind hasn't quite kicked in yet. So you're not thinking about, oh, I've got to get to the store today, or I've got to, I don't know, paint this, I've got to do the ironing, whatever it is. I never iron, so it's never ironing, but whatever it might be, none of that's woken up yet. So I love that first bit of the day. I find it's like rocket fuel. You just kind of go. But the kids start school really early here in Canada, so they are up at 7, so it kind of interrupts my early morning. But basically I get up the crack of dawn and I write while my brain is fresh and real life hasn't kicked in, and then I keep going for as long as I can manage. And it's nice. I don't necessarily write every day, because there are like different aspects to writing. There's also the thinking, there's the plotting, of just figuring things out. And sometimes that's actually, you're better off going for a walk and thinking it all through, and kind of feeding your brain input. If you sit still too long, nothing unclicks, you can get a bit stuck. And sometimes I'll just be quite withdrawn and quiet. And it's because I am writing, but I'm doing it in my head. I'm not necessarily fitting words together, but I'm thinking things through, and I'm in my little world. It's like, don't wake a sleepwalker, it's just this strange, I withdraw a bit, and I sometimes find it difficult being around people if I'm in that mode, because I'm somewhere else. So yes, I'm very disciplined though. So obviously I work at home, as most writers tend to. So you do have to be disciplined, because there's a million other things I could be doing. So I'm quite good at just getting on with it and writing. I can get a bit down in the dumps. I can get a bit sad and depressed if I don't write. Like it's like a part of who I am and what I am. I need to do it. And I think it's quite, when you are like literally writing, or in my strange withdrawn world, it's a bit like meditating. I think your heart rate is slow and steady, and your breathing is all nice, and it's really good for you. So when I'm not doing that for any length of time, I can get in a right old tiz. And as for the illustrating, it's just vital. It's a huge part, it's 50-50 of what makes or breaks a book. So who the illustrator is really matters. I don't usually get any say in that. So my editor will pick who does it. So they'll look at what's in the book. So if I've written it, and some people think you can just give the publishers an idea and they'll go, we like that idea. Yes, write that book, we'll buy it. I don't work like that. I write something in full and then I try and sell it, because otherwise I don't know if it's going to work. So I'll have written something. My publisher will have agreed that it's going to be a book. And so they will look at what's in it. So they'll go, well, there are humans and there are, I don't know, animals or something. So they'll think, well, who can do, and it's funny. So who can do funny, who can do animals and humans, as well as, the one thing as well as the other, or vehicles. So this one, red lorry, yellow lorry, it had to be very young. So it's like, right, who can do really appealing pictures for young tots? So it needs to be bright and clear. Who can do excellent vehicles that are full of character? And so they picked Jez Tuya, who was a perfect choice. So who it is really matters, because it's got to do the very best job of like telling the story. And also the cover really, really matters, because that's what makes people pick a book up. So even when it's, a chunkier book like these ones, which are published by Bloomsbury and illustrated by Sharon Davey, and she's amazing. The cover's like the main thing that's going to make someone pick it up in a store versus the book next to it. So the designer really matters as well as the illustrator. And then, it's illustrated throughout as well. So even though, there's like, I think something like 18,000 words and there's still like 64 pictures, it matters. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's a real magic when you first see the black and white pencil drawings or whatever that they've done, and how they envisage your characters looking and stuff, because I don't tend to describe them as much as I can. I let the illustrator do it. I just think, well, I wouldn't want someone holding my wrist and saying, write it this way. So I don't do it with the illustrations. I'm not like, this is a child who is X high and is wearing this. I just like, you do it, over to you, because they've got to spend ages with it.
We'll stick on the kind of creative process, and you kind of explained a bit about how it works for you and when you write and where you write. But I wanted to ask, what kind of stories do you like telling, and are there any themes you like to explore? And are your stories ever based around kind of real life events, or are they kind of based around myths, fairy tales, or inspired through well-known children's literature?
I think they probably are inspired, and I think real life and obviously all your influences go in anyway without you necessarily realizing deliberately. That's our lives shape us, don't they? Everything influences us and shapes us. So I wouldn't ever deliberately try and do something unless that was my starting idea. Like, I keep sometimes, I love Edward Lear and The Owl and the Pussycat stuff, and I think I'd love to write something set in using his words. But then I think, well, I don't really want to appropriate that, because he's not me and I'm not him, and I can't do it. So I tend not to. But I might be influenced by the style of storytelling. So like, I love Edward Lear, I love Dr. Seuss, of the way that language trips. So I might try and sort of think about what I love about that language and try and emulate that feeling. Generally, I just love funny. I love putting children characters into situations that they couldn't possibly get in real life. I think that's what the joy for me of reading things like The Famous Five or the BFG was. When could I discover a horde of smugglers? Like, Never would I uncover a smuggling ring and then get praised by the police and go to the circus, which is always how they ended, right? Never could I actually meet a giant who blows dreams through my window. But you know, that idea that you can is just, it's lush, isn't it? It's lush. Love all that. What have I not answered?
I think you've answered all of those, to be honest.
Have I?
Yeah.
Have I?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. We'll move on to storytelling skills. And I was going to ask you, what skills do you think are needed to be a successful author writing for a young audience?
Yeah.
And then secondly, have you ever considered writing an adult novel or working in other areas such as film or television screenwriting, writing for stage, or maybe even songwriting?
I'll write anything. I just enjoy writing. If the idea or the mood takes me, I'll do it. I'm working on a cartoon series at the minute with one of my illustrators, which is quite exciting. I work with, I collaborate with David Gibb a lot, who's a children's musician. He's absolutely wonderful. So we quite often sort of have a go, just work together on songs or stage show ideas and things like that. So I just love to collaborate in different ways. If I ever had, sometimes I think I might have an older novel in me. I don't know what it is yet and whether I want to write one. It's sort of, if I had the idea or the urge to write it, I just find whatever wants to write itself out of you, you have to sort of just let it come. But generally with me, it's young stuff. And I think to be able to do it, so what skills do you particularly need to write for children? I think to write successfully, that was your question, wasn't it? What do you need to write successfully? You need to have a very thick skin. You need to understand that whatever you write, even though it's come from you, ultimately, if you want to sell it, the minute you sell it, it belongs to someone else. And the minute it's on the shelves, it belongs to everyone. So they will see their own thing in it. They will criticize it in their own way. They'll try and shape it their own way. And you sort of have to be prepared to let a bit of that go. But I think as long as you stay true to the bits about it that are fundamentally super important to you, that make it exist in the first place, then you're doing all right. And yeah, tenacity and probably a good kind of understanding of the current market. So what you get a lot of, particularly with people trying to come to children's publishing, they'll say, you know, they might be in their, however old they are, 30s, 40s, whatever. And they'll say, oh, when I was a kid, I loved such and such book. That's years and years out of date. We're raising children in an entirely different world. That's not to say those books aren't good or weren't completely valid or don't still have some value, but you do have to understand what's selling now. That really matters. What children are reading now, what bookshops are stocking now, and why. So an understanding of today's market is really, really important. And I think as well, an understanding that nobody got there through luck. So if you go into a bookshop and look at all those books, apart from the celebrity ones, where let's face it, they've had a wide open door, it's hard work. And those books are there for valid reasons. So I think sometimes you get a lot of people being quite dismissive and quite, well, oh, I don't like that one. Well, that's all right. Not every book is for every person, but they're all there for a reason. And they're all there because someone worked really hard.
During the introduction at the beginning, I briefly mentioned that one of your books, Goodnight Spaceman, went to space.
Yes.
I mentioned the astronaut Tim Peeke reading the story from space.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate more and explain exactly how that happened?
Yeah, so Puffin, who did that one, had pitched to the European Space Agency that they were the publisher who deserved to have the rights, the children's publishing rights to whatever Tim Peeke did in space, right? So the European Space Agency said, yes, Puffin, we think you can do a good job of this. And what Puffin had done was they'd showed them my other books. So that's from a series. There's Goodnight Digger, Goodnight Tractor, Goodnight Pirate, Goodnight, and they said, well, a Goodnight Spaceman would be good, wouldn't it? And the European Space Agency agreed and said, yes, please have Michelle Robinson write Goodnight Spaceman. So I did. So I knew kind of a couple of years in advance that this book was going to be happening and that it was going to be going to space with Tim Peeke, but I had to keep very quiet about it. So yes, it was good fun. Yeah, it was cool. Very, very surreal seeing an astronaut sitting aboard the International Space Station and reading your words. He said my name in space, which is kind of really arbitrary and silly, but it felt amazing. It's like, he's in space saying my name. It's very cool. Yeah, it's every so often you get these incredible opportunities, and it's crazy. I still can't quite believe that one. It seems a bit mad.
Yeah. Out of interest, when that happened, did you see a massive increase in sales for the book when that event happened?
I don't. Publishers tend to be quite cagey, letting you know about sales. They don't really want you to know how well you're doing. But that one certainly did very well. It got a lot of, the spotlight was on it for a while. That's very, very rare that you get any spotlight for one of your books. If you're not, a very famous household name, it just doesn't happen, unless there's a specific reason. So that was incredibly rare. And it was great. It was really nice to have a little bit of spotlight for a minute. But what you realize in this industry is, that it's few and far between. So, and just not to expect it all the time. Again, I think people who are outsiders from the industry assume that stuff is just going to happen. You're going to get to go on This Morning and talk about your book. No, you're not. It just doesn't happen. So, that kind of exposure is incredibly rare. So you sort of make hay while the sun shines and just say, well, that's nice. The next book probably won't get that, and will probably only sell 100 copies. But you just keep going anyway. You never know what's going to be your Gruffalo.
You never know what's around the corner, as they say. At the beginning of the interview, we spoke about where you were born, where you were raised, which was in the southwest of England, and we mentioned Gloucester and Bristol, where you worked for a time as well.
Yeah.
But I think it was around about a year or so you decided to emigrate, and you now live in Nova Scotia in Canada.
Yeah.
What's day-to-day life like where you are? And does the location and the setting inspire and help you to write?
Yes. It's lovely here. So it's we couldn't have lived anywhere like this in the UK. So I'm by the sea. I'm in a lovely big old house. Paid off my mortgage, because the way the money goes, it's just like it goes further here. Not in a million years could we have done this at home. Not in a million, billion, squillion years. So we just saw the opportunity and thought, you know what, I think we can give our kids a better chance if we can do this, rather than thinking we probably can't afford to ever put them through college if that's what they want to do, or even buy them a car. I don't think we could have even done that back in the UK. So hopefully we've done a good thing. We've only been here about 7 months, so it's still all very new. And my husband's family were from here back in the day. So we've been coming out here for holidays for years. I knew we loved it here. It's very rural. I'm looking out my window now. I can see a lighthouse and the river. And I went for a walk the other morning. There were seals, like just out the back of my house, seals. Can you imagine? It's like magic. It's just beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. We've got the challenge of building a new life, so making friendships, making sure the kids are happy. All that stuff is it's not a small undertaking, but touch wood, so far it's been wonderful. It will start influencing writing. I haven't had much time to write since we've been here. Starting a new life is quite all-consuming. But yeah, it definitely will. And I think, like I was saying earlier, the things that influence us, you don't necessarily realize the impact they're having until you sort of look back on what you've written later and you go, oh, that's funny, I was writing that. Well, this was happening, and look, it's come out in a weird way. So who knows? But I feel incredibly fortunate right now. But you never know what life's going to throw at you, right? So a few years ago I was very, very ill, and had to have lots of major surgery and stuff and didn't think I was going to survive. So I've learned to try and take those opportunities and risks, because you never know when it's all going to be pulled out from under you, right? So far, so good, having fun. But yeah, it's beautiful in Tatamagouche. Tatamagouche.
Yeah, I knew I was going to fluff that one at the beginning.
You're allowed.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Do you come back to the UK often now, or?
Like I said, we've only been here 7 months, so we've not been back yet. I think we're probably hoping to come back next year at some point. It's been made a lot more complicated, of course, by the pandemic. So that's not been easy at all. And at the minute, we're just trying to get the kids as settled as can be. I think coming back too early would be a bit like ripping off a plaster before the wound is healed. We're just trying to get them settled into life. We've just been through our first winter here, because every holiday we've had here before has been in summer. So that was fun. So much snow, it was unreal.
Cold, very cold.
Yeah, not as cold as I thought it would be. And actually, I prefer it to British winters, because that's just rain, right? I get home, we just get cold and wet, which is miserable, because there are no cold, rainy weather sports for you to enjoy. You just get cold and miserable, right? And wet, which is cold and wet is a horrible thing to be. But here, there's a ski hill half an hour down the road, so we've learned to ski this year. You can go snowshoeing. It's lovely. It's absolutely lovely. I'd much prefer that, because I'm not wet and cold. I'm just wrapped up warm and cold, but I'm wrapped up, so it's fine. And there's snow, which is awesome.
You're selling it to me. I might go and emigrate to Canada.
Yeah,
who knows?
yeah. Honestly, it was, we were able to, and I'm really glad. I'm really, really glad. It feels good. But even that we were only able to do because of my career. So as a self-employed person, the only 2 ways I think that they will take you in Canada when you apply, you can be an international, is it like an international sporting person or something like, so I could have been an Olympian or something and they might have had me, or you have to say that your job has a significant cultural impact. So I had to write an essay saying why my job has significant cultural impact. So it's because of, all those decisions I made, looking back over my life and how I got here, that's enabled this. So again, these stepping stones, right? You don't realize what ground you're kind of laying and what things you're making possible. But I don't know, I figure I've got to assume you only ever get one crack of the whip. So give it a good go, right?
I think that's a good philosophy to have, to be honest. From a change of place, a change of culture, we now go back to kind of the publishing business. And I wanted to ask about changes to publishing since your first book was published back in 2012.
Yeah.
What would you say are the challenges and obstacles facing children's authors in today's climate? And has technology in any way changed the way children read and consume stories?
I don't know. I think the main challenge is what a busy world we live in terms of the demands on our attention. Screens have become all encompassing. You're like trying to get someone's attention for longer than a scroll.
The dreaded mobile phone.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't live without mine, but I wish I could. I wish I could just put the thing down, because I'm much happier when I'm not constantly wondering what I'm missing. Nothing. It's all still there anyway, isn't it, if you don't look? But this is it, their attention is pulled so many different ways. When you can pick anything, you even pick your telly now, whatever you want to watch on telly, that drives me nuts. I just want to be surprised, or to just go, oh, do you know what, there's nothing on that I want to watch. But there's
almost too much choice now, I think, is the problem.
Yes.
You could spend literally hours on something like Amazon Prime and Netflix deciding what you're going to watch.
Drives me nuts. This is my one major source of frustration in this house, is we'll just sit and everyone's just scrolling. We're going from one app to the other, trying to find something that we don't actually even want to watch. It drives me nuts. So I think this diverted attention is a massive problem. We're all told as authors that we've got to have a platform, social media platform. Honestly, what value it has, I'm not that sure, because what a noisy environment, right? Everyone's shouting about their book. Buy my book, buy my book. look at these wonder pants, whatever it is, it's just everything, it's nuts. So I would say that's the biggest obstacle. What was your other part of your question? Talking about
we
TV.
said about technology, which
technology, that's a good one.
And
so when I first started in publishing, they were just starting to think about automatically making like an e-reader version of every book so that kids could look at them on tablets. They very quickly stopped because they realized no one was looking at picture books that way. I don't know why, because you could and you can, but there's something much more satisfying when you're reading books with very young children about the physicality of a book.
Yeah.
You know, it's a unique and wonderful technology all in its own right. It's much more, I mean, they're fine motor skills, even of them turning pages. And I don't know, if it's on a tablet, you've got other distractions inbuilt in it, right? If it's you and your kid and a book, the phone's somewhere else. You're not going to be interrupted by pinging up emails or whatever it might be. So I just think that I don't think it has affected things. I did get my kids Kindles this year because particularly my daughter is at the point where she's moving on from highly illustrated books to denser text with no pictures. And she finds a big chunky book quite intimidating. So I found that the Kindle was quite a good way of giving her a big book she didn't even realize, because it's always the same size, right? It's not, I don't want to read that one. Look at it, it's massive. It's, oh, I like the sound of that one. And before they know it, they're reading and reading and reading. But again, that's not a threat or a challenge to publish. It's still a book. It's still been paid for. And the story is still going in. So the vehicle doesn't really matter. The storytelling is what's important, and someone getting a fair price for it matters. So I think there are opportunities as well within it all. But I think the big challenge is how on earth you get anyone's attention long enough to convince them to pick your book up. It's hard, very, very hard. And there's always another book coming out. So even if you do get the spotlight on yours for a day, there's another one out tomorrow. So it's very hard, and particularly in an environment where, unfortunately, you go into WH Smith's or whatever, and you'll just have a wall of David Walliams. What can anyone else do? You don't get a look in. So that's hard. I think it's harder on kids than anything, though, because if they don't like that, they're not going to develop a love of books, are they?
Yeah, that's true.
And you need that springboard where you can find the book that makes you a reader. And it's not necessarily the same flavor for everyone, is it? We all are into different things, but that's frustrating, but it's one of those things. You learn to shrug it off and carry on plowing your furrow.
Away from writing, you're a mother, and you've kind of touched upon your children already.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your children and what they think of your work? And other than writing, what are your interests and hobbies, and what do you like to do to relax?
My kids are awesome. They've taken, particularly through this, moving countries, they've taken it in their stride. I find them completely inspiring and amazing. They're very resilient. Because I'm just watching a bald eagle. It's just,
wow.
It's a bald eagle just flying over. I turn you and show, but I don't think you'll see it. But yeah, just a little bald eagle skimming outside my window. Incredible. When they were younger, I think they really, really loved what I did for a job, because they could come around with me to the literary festivals and they'd get to meet people like Cressida Cowell backstage in the green room and things like that, which is very cool. They met Hacker the dog from CBeebies and stuff like that. So that was like bonus. Now they're at that age where it's a little bit more embarrassing, because they're becoming teenagers, and your parents are like the most cringy thing. But I think on balance, I think they understand what the privilege they've had of seeing, like meeting other authors and illustrators and stuff. Loads of kids don't get that experience. It's been amazing. And I'm really glad that I've shown them that you can make a living from your own self. You can be creative and you can use your skills. If you really stick at it and you're committed and you work hard, you can make a living, not necessarily just in someone's employment, but from you. So if they've got a dream And if they want to keep working at that skill, they can do it. And I hope they realize what a lucky thing that is. I feel really, really fortunate that I can do that, because not everybody can. And I feel really fortunate that I can work every day and love my job. That's amazing. So many people are going to work and hating it. So that's cool. So they're doing ace. I do think they're just probably a little bit mortified by the fact that their mum regularly dresses up as a sausage or whatever. Now it's just a bit cringy.
Away from the writing and obviously the commitments that come with that, what do you kind of like to do in terms of your interests and hobbies?
I love
relax.
walking. I try and exercise, because that's the first thing. When you write, your bum is in a seat all day long. I try and walk and run. The nature here is amazing. So there's a beach not far away. I like just going for walks on the beach, learning about the wildlife, looking for sea glass. That's quite exciting. It's really boring, but I love it. I like to cook and bake. I like trying to catch up with friends. Actually, one of the bonuses of this last couple of years for me has been getting better at Zooming and stuff and seeing people. That's lovely. I don't do that a lot. I'm very shy and withdrawn. And I always think, well, people don't want to hear from me. They don't want to be bothered by me. But I love catching up with everyone. It's really, really nice. I'm on the board of the local arts centre here, because I wanted to do something that got me involved in the community. And so that's quite good fun. So I'm getting to grips with, there's a lot on my plate at the minute, because moving country is a big deal. And I'm in this very small village. It's a very tight-knit community. So sort of trying to find my place in it where I can be useful and make a contribution to the wonderful sort of life around in the communities. That's taking a lot of my thought and time at the minute, thinking, what can I do that's practical and helpful and good? So that's good fun. I'm going to be going in and reading the school children and stuff soon, and hoping to make that regular. I love doing stuff like that. I love all sorts. It's good fun. It's good fun here.
I wanted to ask how difficult it is to earn a living and be an established writer like yourself. And what advice would you have for anyone looking to get their work published and pursue a writing career?
I think you have to assume, and this isn't me being negative or trying to put anyone off in any way, but you have to assume that you will need to keep your day job. So even, when I had my first publishing deal, and then I think 4 more, I carried on working for a long time, because you have to. It's not enough money to sustain you, and you never know when your luck's going to run out. So yes, it is challenging, and for me it took years. I mean, I've been doing this for years now, and my earnings increase a little bit every year, and it's that sort of crept up a bit as time's gone on, and as I've sort of carved out more of a bit more shelf space. Like, as I was thinking of myself elbowing Michael Rosen along a bit, because I'm next to him alphabetically. So you have to sort of be prepared for it to be a long slog, you just have to have goals in mind. I figured out, me and my husband had to sit down and think about finances. How can we, what's the bare minimum we need to get by, to make sure we covered our bills? How do we do that? How do we keep paying the mortgage? How do we keep paying the council tax when I do give up work? Because I knew I wanted to do that eventually. So we had to figure everything out really tightly and adapt our lives accordingly. So if it was, I'm going to be a full-time author, but my earnings are only going to be really quite low. They're very low to start with. What do I have to give up? What can I not do anymore? I think you have to be prepared to potentially make some sacrifices, because there's not big money in it unless you're incredibly fortunate. It's little, and it's only really through having lots of books on the shelves and each of them earning a little bit that it adds up to become a kind of more like a salary. I've
got one final question, and then we move on to the quick fire questions that we ask every single Your Take guest. So the final question is, what are your plans for the future? And are you currently writing a new book? And are there any plans for your books to be made into children's television animations or used in other media?
Yeah, so I'm always writing other books. So at the minute, I'm writing the third one in this series.
Yeah.
That comes out in November. So that's Do Not Disturb the Dragons and Do Not Mess with the Mermaids. So Do Not Panic the Pixies hopefully comes out in November if I can get it right. Turns out writing during a pandemic and emigrating is quite hard. I'm writing, I've got several picture books on the go. So today and yesterday I've had all the roughs and the colours through for The Pumpkin Who Was Afraid of the Dark, When Ice Cream Had a Meltdown, the other ones I've been seeing, Counting Sheep. So lots and lots of books kind of in the process that I'm waiting for them to publish, or we're editing them and making changes before they actually are printed. And I'm working on all sorts, always. So I tend to juggle a good few projects at any one time. I'm working on an animated series that's hopefully going to be an animated series. What else am I doing? All sorts, James, always all sorts. And I like for me, writing these longer books is actually quite challenging, because picture books for me, I can do almost with my eyes shut. It's like doing a really difficult crossword puzzle. You know, you've got 300 words and you've got to have a beginning, a middle and an end. You've got to have a really strong character, have all these emotional pulls. It's got to feel satisfying. It's got to be funny, whatever. 18,000 words is much different. You have subplot, you have a whole cast of characters. I've got a magical world. So you've got to figure out the magical rules and who is with who. And, you know, if you've got a certain bit of plot going on, well, have I brought my character along? What time of day is it? What time of day was it a minute ago? Have they even stopped to eat yet? You know, all this stuff that for me is quite challenging. So I'm learning as I go, and I think I will always try and challenge myself. So there's lots of other ambitions and plans that I hope to do. My main goal, having moved here, is how I maintain the career I've established in the UK and how I build on that from a distance. So that's going to be interesting. I don't quite know what challenges that's going to throw up. Normally I'd be on the road, I'd be visiting schools a lot, doing literary festivals. Obviously now I can only do that in the UK virtually. That's not necessarily a problem. I'm very good at virtual events. I've been doing them all over the last 2 years and it's been great. So it might be that carries on a bit, but I don't know. So like I say, make hay while the sun shines. I just hope that I can carry on sustaining a career with the move I've made. I don't see why not. But you just never know, right? And there's always some bright young thing coming up with better ideas, which is what you'd hope for, really, right? It's all
Michelle
good.
Robinson, it's that time where we ask every single guest these same questions.
Yes.
It's just to kind of finish the interview, kind of find out a bit about you that maybe we didn't know, or maybe we didn't discover in the last 60 minutes, but the same questions are asked to every guest.
Yep.
You don't need to think about them in any depth.
Yep.
Come straight into your mind. Here we go. First of all, what would you say is your favorite pastime?
Reading.
Spoken lots about storytelling, books, of course, that's stating the obvious. You haven't really spoke about cinema. What would you say is your favorite film and why?
The Goonies. Goonies never say die, innit? I love the Goonies. I think it's just a perfect spirit of childhood and friendships and adventure. It's the adventure we all want to have, and those buddies who are your buddies for life and are, you know, with you in the thick of it. Love it.
Interestingly, my last guest, who was only 22, chose that film.
It's an excellent film.
Interesting. And I actually have a mate who lives in this village.
Yeah.
He crazily went all the way to America to find all the sets for the film and do a YouTube video. It's actually on YouTube.
Oh, amazing.
That was his hobby, going to film locations.
Wow.
And he went to the sets and found all the locations.
Yeah, I think it's things like that. You know, we grow up with all this influence from US and North America. That's why I love it here. It looks like the Goonies, you know. I keep thinking there could be treasure. You in any one of these coves. I'm sure there are problematic things about that film now in terms of, you know, political correctness and stuff, but
Yeah.
it's glorious, that spirit of, you know, kids together having this wonderful adventure, and the music's brilliant. And yeah, it's just a moment in time as well. It just reminds me of childhood. It's brilliant.
I heard they were doing a sequel, but I don't know if it'll ever happen. This is going to be difficult for you. Who would you say is your favorite novelist?
Oh, that's hard. That is hard. Novelist. Who do I read a lot of? Gosh, I really like William Boyd. He's a British novelist. He writes really good stuff. It's probably not my favorite though. I don't know who my favorite is. Changes a lot. I did love that Eleanor Oliphant book. What was that lady's name? Sally something, isn't it? She was brilliant. I'm looking forward to seeing what else she does. Very, very funny. I love Sue Townsend, actually, who did The Diary of Adrian Mole. Every single sentence is hilarious. There's a real skill. Like even the throwaway sentences are side-splittingly funny. That's smart. Nora Ephron. I like Nora Ephron. Yeah. Don't know, that's a hard one. That is hard.
If you could have had a different profession, what would it have been?
Oh gosh. I always like the idea of being an archaeologist. I like digging around in mud, finding stuff. I love history. And it's stories, isn't it? It's all stories. You know, every little item you find, that's someone's life, that's part of someone's, who they were and what made them. I love all that. I'd quite like to be a country singer. I can't sing or do anything vaguely musical, but I love country songs because they're storytelling. Yeah. So that'd be quite good fun. Anything, I'd be anything. It all looks fun to me.
Who in life would you say has been your greatest inspiration?
Probably my dad. He's really playful, really silly, works really hard.
Still alive?
Yeah, he's ace. He just taught me that, you know, you can do anything if you work hard enough. And I believed him because my dad's always right. And he taught me loads of stuff as well. He's very practical. So I'm very practical. You know, I would watch him and he'd let me do stuff, you know, with tools. And I love all that. Yeah, it's a good chat, my dad.
We come on to newspapers. This is always interesting. Do you read a newspaper? And if so, which one?
I don't tend to read a newspaper because I don't hardly ever see a newspaper anymore in print. The Chronicle Herald is my newspaper here. I do like to keep up with the local stuff here. It's really important for me to learn like what's going on politically and all that stuff. So I read that here. It's called Saltwire. So I do that online. And then I just I read Twitter, which is bad, isn't it? That's bad. It's bad. But you know, you get people sharing stories. So you end up reading all kinds of different papers via links. So yeah, I don't really have a particular one. The one I absolutely hate is the Daily Mail, which my mother reads religiously and believes everything she reads in it. I can tell you that's the one I absolutely hate. It just seems to exist to scare women and keep them scared.
I work in a shop, and in a village shop, and it literally flies out the door, the Daily Mail. Always sells out. Yeah, it's the most popular. I think it is the most popular UK paper.
It's dreadful. Absolute tosh. Yeah, I can tell you that I hate that. I'll read any sort of well-considered, interesting piece that, you know, I like facts, and I sometimes like opinion, and I like reading a breadth of opinions because it reminds me that there are different perspectives out there, and that's fine. But I do always read with that firmly in mind that, you know, everything's written from a perspective, everything's written with some kind of agenda, even if it's not intended. You know, we're all coming from a different viewpoint, aren't we? So yes,
I think we agree on something that I can, on the record, I totally agree with you on the Daily Mail. In terms of food now, are you a cook? I think you said you love cooking and baking.
Yeah,
what is your favorite food?
Oh, I love a roast dinner. I've been introducing Canadians to Yorkshire puddings. So like, what the heck is this? I'm like, yeah, this is glory. That's what this is. I love cooking. I like to bake. I have a terrible sweet tooth. My favorite food here is called poutine, which is basically cheesy gravy chips.
Ah.
Oh, it's amazing. It's just like the ultimate comfort food. Big pile of chips, which of course they call fries. They're chips, coated in gravy, and then with cheese curds, all melts in. Oh, it's so wrong, it's right. Salty, comforting goodness.
From food next to cultural icons, this always stumps every guest. Who would you say is your favorite cultural icon? You could choose maybe a political figure, someone from history, maybe a designer or builder, someone who's changed the way we live.
Greta Thunberg. She's amazing.
Yeah.
She's, I think she's exceptional. I watched her documentary and I felt completely intimidated by her, because there's no way I could be as staunch as she is. You know, like a complete, I won't eat that if it's, you know, got food, food miles or whatever. I mean, she's just like nails. But I find her completely inspiring, that she's so young and so determined. I think she's brilliant. And I know not everyone feels that way, but what a gutsy young woman. And everything she's saying about global warming, she's completely right. And to stand up in front of, global politicians and call them out on it, freaking awesome. More of this from our young people, because they're going to need it. We're handing them a world that we have absolutely messed up. So if we don't have young people who've got that passion and that courage and conviction of thought, the world we're giving them, oh my, I dread to think. I dread to think. So Greta, all the way. Go Greta.
Can I ask you next, what is your favorite curse word and why?
Oh God, I'm not allowed to see. I'm a children's author. You're not allowed. Yeah. So there'll be points where you're writing a rhyming story and you really want it to be about a duck, and you're like, I
probably have your book publisher try and sue me when they see this video up on YouTube.
I actually really like, because I mentioned earlier I had an operation. So the operation I had was to remove my large bowel. So I wear a bag. I have an ileostomy, so I poo in a bag, right? So I am very, very vocal about poo and stuff. I don't get kind of cringy about it. I know a lot of people don't like children's books that are about poos and farts and bums, but I personally, and my dad has bowel cancer. I think we have to talk about this stuff, because otherwise you end up with people who are too scared to go to a doctor and end up too far along with bowel cancer. So I like anything to do with bum and poo, and I think that's fine and great to talk about bums and poos. So it's not quite a curse word, but poo bums, bottoms, anything like that, really. It's all good with me. But yeah, people can get very snotty about having it in kids' books, but it's just closetedness.
It makes them laugh though. My kids, that's all they talk about.
They do love it.
They're obsessed. Yeah,
it does. It's an easy win though, isn't it? You say fart in front of a kid and suddenly you're a champion and a hero. But no, I genuinely think it's quite important that we're not too snooty about that stuff, because then you end up with people who have health problems and don't want to mention them to doctors, and then we end up with people dying too young. So bums and poo.
From that now to a favorite place or holiday destination. You might already be there where you live now, but what is your favorite place or holiday destination?
I need a new one now, don't I? Because I'm living in it, so it no longer works as my favorite destination when I'm in it. Anywhere that is sort of, I don't like heat. I'm not very good in really hot weather. So I'm not a beachy person. I hate sand. It really annoys me. So really anywhere with history. So I like castles, and I like architecture and history. So where did we go recently? We went to Amsterdam, and that was amazing, but I was just really interested in the canals and the houses and all of that stuff. So anywhere with history, anywhere. That's rubbish, wasn't it? But anywhere with history, which is everywhere. Everywhere is my favorite destination. Let's have that.
We touched a little bit on music, because you said you like country music. Who is your favorite music artist, and what would you say is your favorite album?
God, that's really hard. It's probably Radiohead and OK Computer. I've seen Radiohead several times. I love them. And I know loads of people find it really depressing, but I find it just makes me want to dance. I love it. I find it uplifting. I'm not sure what that says about my baseline mood, but I just think it's brilliant. I love they're just cracking songs. So yeah, that's probably okay, computer.
What would you say next is your greatest achievement to date?
Oh, having awesome kids.
Nice answer.
I did well. They're brilliant. I don't know how I did it. So that, yeah, that, and getting published at all, I think it's quite a feat.
And finally, the last question, Michelle Robinson, the hardest
Sad
one
times.
of the lot, is taxing. How do you wish to be remembered?
Joyfully, I hope. I just hope I do something positive. I always think if one kid can enjoy one book, or it just improves their day, you never know. You go into a school or whatever and you share stories, you just don't know which of those kids is sitting there with some big worries on their mind and is having a really rough time at home. Don't know. So I just hope that through what I do, I make some kids' day a bit better, or maybe show them that it's not always going to be like that, and they've got good stuff in them. So hopefully that. But yeah, I hope to be remembered joyfully. That would be nice. I hope not to die yet. Also, just add, I don't have any plans to. But yeah, we never know, do we?
Michelle Robinson, thank you kindly. I apologize that we weren't this morning, so you had to take a second best, but I appreciate, or maybe a sixth best or 10th division in comparison.
Way better. No ad breaks either.
The Conference League or whatever. No ad breaks. Yeah, true. Yeah, and maybe a little bit more detailed questions, perhaps, and a bit more airtime. But yeah, thank you kindly for being a guest the last 60 minutes. And
thank you for having me.
I think what shone through definitely during the interview is just your absolute passion and love for what you do. That definitely has come across, and it's been interesting to hear your knowledge on all things from like storytelling to your roots here in the Southwest, working with the book publishers about the market. You have to obviously write for a market.
Yeah.
Emigrating to Canada, but I wish you all the best with the new venture where you are now, and also with your new books. And yeah,
thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's really, really nice to chat. I love talking about me. I'm my favorite specialist subject. You start me off and I don't stop though, James. So well done for drawing it to a close.
That's good. That's what you want from an interviewee. The worst thing you want, I've only had it once, is where you're trying to home for questions and you just get one word answers, and you're literally thinking,
I've listened to some podcasts like that and I'm like, ooh, this is hard work.
Yeah, I suppose you can always catch someone on a bad day, in fairness, so you're just doing a bad job as an interviewer. So it happens.
Anyway, it's been lovely. Thank you very much for having me.
And how do we find out more about your work?
So if you go to my website, it's michellerobinson.co.uk. But yes, if you're interested in my books, they're available in all the usual places, online and in bookstores. So yes, there are a great many of them. Can't miss me.
Thanks again for joining me this evening. What time are you now? You're about...
It's 6:15 in the evening. Tea time.
I shall leave you in peace then on that note.